Well, hey guys, thank you for joining. I am Chief Science Officer Marissa, who's a part of the International Leadership Council. And I'd like to thank everyone and welcome them to the Chief Science Officer Zoom In on Science calls. So here we're learning about STEM professionals and their careers to help understand the impact of their job in modern life. To keep us engaged in learning while we're all quarantined, we welcome Dr. Christine. I heard your last name was pronounced earlier, Figgener?
Yes, perfect.
Awesome. Okay.
Just relax.
Dr. Christine Figgener, marine conservation biologist and ocean advocate who is passionate about marine turtles. Can you please tell our participants a little bit about yourself and your work?
Yeah, so just to give you the spiel really quickly, as you can probably tell from my accent, I'm not US American. I'm not even native speaker. So I am from Germany, a country in Europe, as you might be aware, hopefully, I guess. And you know what? It's really interesting that I am a marine biologist because I am from a tiny town. I don't know if you see that right there, which is super landlocked in Western Germany. And it is an area that is probably comparable to the area around Pittsburgh, I think, in the US. So a lot of industry and a lot of coal mining. So it is really not that pretty. And I think that probably nurtured my wish to leave that area as soon as I turned 18 and was able to, probably even earlier than that. But I got really lucky because I had parents that were ocean lovers, and so most of our vacations were done somewhere on the coast. And you know, it's so interesting when you live or grow up in Europe, you have to envision that every country is almost like a state or less than a state of the US. So it is super easy to just travel to another country. And you know what, it was actually, even though we have two coastlines in Germany, here from the North Sea and the Baltic Sea, but from where I lived, it was actually closer to go over to the Netherlands. It was about 2.5 hours and vacation on the coast right there. So, but my first vacation was in Greece. Yeah, I have a little photo right there of me about being, I think, 2 years old. So my mom always remembers how old I was because I was still able to fly for free. So Germans are a little stingy, and that was like definitely a seller on that at that point. And it was really funny because when they were trying to, you know, animate me to go into the water, it was like I was really scared to go because I could see that there was something swimming underneath the surface, and I really didn't want to go into the water. And my dad, being just a practical, he's actually an engineer, so very engineering, very logical. He was, you know what, I'm going to buy you a pair of diving goggles so you can see what's there, and then you know there's nothing to be scared of. So that's what happened. And for the rest of the vacation, I literally just spent the entire time in the water. So there's photos of me. I can't show them because I was butt naked on those photos, but I was just swimming in there. Sorry, that's European, I guess. I was just swimming in the water, looking down. I couldn't even really swim. I was just more floating on the surface, just looking at all the cool stuff that was out there. And that was pretty much the day that my passion for the oceans was born. And yeah, my dad nurtured all of that, you know, by feeding me documentaries done by Hans Haas and Jacques Cousteau. And when I was about 13 years old, I started to intern at an aquarium in Germany that had dolphins and sea lions in captivity. So I got exposed really early on to science as well, because there was a bunch of biologists and students that were running around there that did cool stuff. And it also gave me an idea of how I can make my passion into a profession. Because, you know, it's not always clear. I knew in kindergarten I wanted to be an ocean explorer, but how can you actually make a living with that? You know, that is sometimes the question. So when I was about 16 and going to be in the 11th grade in Germany, I went for an exchange year in California in the US for a year. Where I was also volunteering in the Science and Conservation Center, SciCon, in, I think it belongs to the Tulare County District, which was really cool. It was not so much ocean, but it was definitely biology and education and outreach stuff. So I went back to Germany, finished my high school there, and then I left the ugly area that I grew up in to go and study in the beautiful south of Germany. So I got a bachelor's degree in biology from University of Tübingen, right there. That's close to Stuttgart. And I don't know where my cursor is right now. Oh, it's right there. And then I really wanted to go to the coast to Hamburg because I really wanted to study humpback whales to do my master's. And it happened that I was studying during a time that Germany switched over their degree system. So we didn't have, something that was called a bachelor and a master in those days. And we wanted to be, more comparable to like all the European countries. So we switched over and I was still studying under the old system, and University of Hamburg didn't accept my degree system anymore. So I was really devastated because that was literally what I had worked towards my entire life at that point. And I needed to think about what else to do. So I kind of talked to the people that I had gotten to know during my internships, and they were great, giving me advice and said, you know what, Chris, whatever you want to do with your degree is totally up to you. I mean, biology, yeah, of course, you can specialize in marine biology right away, but the general concepts are the same no matter what. So I decided, okay, then I want to do maybe something because I want to work with animals, even though in the ocean, something that's like related to animal ecology or behavior. And I found the University of Würzburg in the south that had a great degree in animal ecology and behavioral physiology. And that's what I did. I did my master's right there. And then maybe it was serendipity, I don't know. The first day that I stepped into that university, I saw a announcement at the blackboard that was looking for research assistants for a leatherback project in Costa Rica. And it was already kind of outdated at that point. I stepped into it April, and they were looking for like January, February. But I contacted them and asked them if that was something that happened every year, and they said yes. And so I applied for the next years and then went for 6 months for the first time ever to Costa Rica to work with sea turtles right there. And that was the moment where, kind of everything changed for me. So humpback whales were the big thing before. And I remember the first time I ever saw a leatherback nesting, it was really the hook for the rest of my life, I think, because I don't know if you can envision that, you are walking those beaches where there's nobody else except of you and maybe the person next to you. It is dark. Above you is just the night sky. On one side is the jungle, on the other side is the ocean. And you're really scared that you might miss a turtle because I had never seen one nesting before. And then all of a sudden you see this massive animal that is making its way out of the water. You thought in the beginning it might have been a log, but then it started moving, and then you can just see how it, laboriously makes its way up on the beach, and you can hear it breathing, and then you see it laying its eggs after it had been digging a hole with its hind flippers. They were like used like hands. And I remember I'm still getting chills because I remember I was sitting there and I was just thinking, wow, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. And I need to make sure that whoever's coming after me is having a chance of seeing those animals as well. Yeah, so that was pretty much the defining moment. And I really wanted to come back to Costa Rica. And my boss back then was also really interested that I started working for him. But I told him, hey, dude, I kind of need to finish my master's first. And he was like, well, don't you do your thesis here? And I was like, wow, okay. So an idea was born. I went back to Germany, found me a professor that was willing to support my thesis in Costa Rica. I mean, she was happy to give me advice, but I had to find my own funding, and I did. So I did a genetic study on leatherbacks where I've tried to figure out how they're mating. Yeah, and when I finished that, so I stayed a year in Costa Rica, about 10 months, went back to Germany, analyzed those samples in the lab, and right after I packed everything up, gave away most of my belongings, and then moved to Costa Rica for good and stayed there for about 8 years. And the good thing about Costa Rica is that, you know what, and I don't know what happened to my other part of the slides. It's kind of gone. Maybe it is going to, there it is. The good thing about Costa Rica is that it has 2 coasts. And we have leatherback nesting on both coasts. So I kind of started out here in the very south. And then I was able to start working in a project right here in the Nicoya Peninsula. And, for several years, I kind of just moved back and forth between the two coasts because luckily leatherbacks nest asynchronically. One season, excuse me, when one season stops, the other one starts and so on. So I was pretty much employed year round just from two different projects. Then we had some issues in the Caribbean. That project collapsed, and I actually started for the first time to work with humpback whales in the very south here on the Pacific. So, my childhood dream came true. And interestingly, it's nice to work with humpback whales, but I really prefer working with sea turtles because there's nothing that I know of where you can work with, such large animals so closely and hands-on without, for example, having to sedate them or capture them always in a really nasty way. So yeah, that was definitely another moment where I thought, yeah, I'm doing the right thing. I love humpback whales, but sea turtles are really cool as well, just as cool. Yeah, with the time though, so I did a lot of conservation. We were trying to prevent mainly poaching from happening of the eggs and the females. And we had a lot of issue with plastics as well. So, plastics became more and more prevalent. So they were always kind of the sad byline. A lot of things that we've been witnessing where you can see turtles that were inflicted affected by plastics that either died or got lucky and just got entangled, but were suffering a lot. And a lot of other really nasty stuff that I had to witness. A lot of times, somehow related to us humans. And I got a little bit fed up by it, I think. And I felt I just am not doing enough. And plus, I always had bosses that I worked for, usually men. And as you can tell, I'm, not looking very Latina. And I'm also not from Costa Rica. So it became sometimes a big conflict. I'm also not acting like a Latina. I'm very opinionated, very strong-headed. So I was clashing with a lot of my male colleagues. So I'm probably having 99% of the people that I work with from the country are men. So that was a massive problem. And, with the years that I've worked, I spent more time in the field than most of my bosses. So I knew what I was talking about, and I still wasn't able to make the actual decisions. And that really bothered me as well. So I kind of had to step back and think about how I can increase my impact and how I can become more autonomous, especially as a woman scientist. And I decided that I would go for my PhD, to become a PhD so I can be my own boss. And, just for the sake of my education that I have this stupid title, people recognize my expertise. It's really sad actually that it has to happen that way, but this is the reality of things. So I contacted some of my mentors and talked to them about, who would be a good fit to do a PhD. And they gave me a few names, and I contacted those professors, and I kind of boiled it down to 2 labs in the US. And I got accepted to both. And then I decided on the one that had the better funding actually, because it is important that you're able to sustain yourself, I guess, as a student, and it's not always that easy. So that was when I went to Texas A&M with my back then Dr. Mother, Dr. Pamela Plotkin. So she was also, which was great, she had been working in Costa Rica herself as a PhD student. So she knew the country, and she knew a lot of the stuff that was going on there, and was totally fine with me continuing to work there while doing the research for my PhD. Yeah, and then I was in the program for about 5.5 years. Just graduated last fall, and during that time, and maybe I'm going to just kind of go to the next slide to just show you if there was another fuck hidden. Kind of the things that I've been doing, mainly my PhD. You know what? Since I've been such a long time in Costa Rica, I don't have that many photos of myself doing stuff, I've noticed. So it's more recent actually where you can see stuff. So for my PhD, I did an ecology study where I analyzed stable isotopes in turtles and did satellite tracking and VHF radio tracking on the turtles. You can see me here installing the different transmitters with epoxy and trying to find turtles with the antenna. Yeah, and I think the moment that probably has been defining my career a little bit at least is when 2015, when I was collecting samples for my PhD, we found a turtle that had a straw stuck in its nose. So I happened to have a camera in my hand and I filmed my colleague while he was pulling on that object that we really didn't know what it was in the beginning. And it turned out to be a plastic straw. So that is a little bit the claim of fame that I have. And yeah, I mean, like I said, it wasn't the first time that I saw a sea turtle inflicted or affected by plastic, but it was definitely one of the most how would I put it, more impressive or like more, yeah, impacting videos or stories that I was able to tell about it. And I've become a little bit the accidental storyteller ever since. So a lot of people now listen to my opinion, which is kind of cool. You know, I can talk about sea turtles all day long and also about plastic and plastic pollution and what all of us can do to help turtles in the water, because you don't really have to be on the beach with me to help sea turtles. It is really about trying to prevent plastic from entering the oceans, and that is happening in our everyday lives. Yeah, and recently I resumed a new role as the Director of Science and Education for Footprint Foundation. So that is one of the co-sponsors of this entire week right now. And I'm super excited about this role because it really gives me the chance to continue the advocacy that I've already been doing for the past years. So I can help prevent plastic from, plastic waste from even being produced. So it never has the chance to even harm my turtles in the end. So this is great. So this is exactly what I hoped for when I was, really desperate in Costa Rica, thinking about how I can increase my impact. And everything that I was doing there, I felt it was just like a band-aid, not enough. This is exactly the position that is going to help me to, do kind of tackle the problem from the other side right now. It's not the only thing that I'm doing though, so I'm still active in sea turtle conservation in Costa Rica. I'm the founder of two nonprofit organizations in Costa Rica, Costa Rican Alliance for Sea Turtle Conservation and Science, COASTS, and Namaka Conservation Science, which both are like they're actually kind of working together. We're doing different conservation and research projects in Costa Rica. Right now, we are supposed to be starting a season June 1st. And another thing that I'm really excited about, I'm also an impactor on Milky Wire. So if you are kind of passionate about grassroots conservation, check out Milky Wire. It's a great platform where you can see all kinds of individuals like me that are doing grassroots conservation. Because a lot of times there's big organizations that, try to kind of collect money, but in the end nothing is really, well, like you don't really get to know the people that do the on the ground work, and Milky Wire is kind of trying to solve that issue. Yeah, and if you want to kind of stay connected, there's my different social media stuff. And if you want to see a video of what we're doing when we're catching turtles, Kelly, you can shake or nod your head, yes, then I also have a video. So wait a second. Actually, that's the one where we capture turtles. So when we found, for example, the turtle with the straw, this is usually what it looks like. So we jump in the water, and then actually my colleague was a little bit quicker than I was because I was having the camera. So he's pulling out the turtles, and then we're kind of transporting them to the boat. First of all, we're checking what they're up to. If they're, having any tags or anything, and then we guide them on the boat and take different measurements and stuff. And the other one is actually a turtle release. So after we have them on the boat and we do different sampling, we release them. So right there, she's really happy to go. You can see we're trying to actually find them again later on when they're nesting. So they have a radio transmitter on it, and we also paint them. So it's a lot easier to find them later on the beach. Yeah, and with that, a long introduction, I think we can answer questions, if I haven't already answered some of them in my introduction.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you, Dr. Christine, for that. Yeah, we'll totally go to the chat box right now and let's scroll up to find the first question. It was pretty early on. Let me see. Tyra asked, throughout your journey from learning to internships and working, what was a method you used to stay focused and also make an impact in your own way?
I think I was always pretty self-motivated. I don't know. I know that that's not always the case with people. So I never had an issue of I knew exactly where I wanted to be. So I just kind of did what was necessary to get there. So I think I never have this thing. And this is why I chose a job like I do. Like I need to be passionate about what I'm doing. So I've never been good at jobs that I just did for money. I've done those for sure. So, but even those jobs were just the means to getting there where I am today. So when I was in the grocery store stacking shelves, when I was a waitress somewhere, all of that was always with this idea in mind, you know, saving up money to go to Costa Rica, for example, or I had the chance to go to Egypt for 4 months and I needed money. So it was always kind of, you know, this self-motivating thing or like this bigger thing that I was working towards.
The next question was from our very own Kelly. She says, we believe science is a language, but did you find the language difference a barrier in Costa Rica when you worked there?
Oh, when you're speaking Spanish. So I knew nothing of Spanish. Like I said, I'm German, so my mother tongue is German, and I learned English mainly when I was an exchange student. I think that's probably when I became fluent in English. And so when I went to Costa Rica, I literally knew how to say thank you and good morning in Spanish. That was it. And I remember the first week that I was there, everyone spoke only Spanish because all of even the international students they were there, they spoke pretty proficient Spanish. So it was just those rapid conversations, every meeting, everything was in Spanish, and I was super overwhelmed. But you know, sometimes you just need to give it a little bit of time. And I had brought, of course, a book to learn Spanish while I was there, and I just kind of dove into it, and I, you know, try to learn about 30 new words every day and the grammatical structures. And I mean, of course, it helps if you already know a different language. And I had Latin for like 7 or 8 years in school. So you know how Roman based languages work. And I think I'm a good autodidact, so I can teach myself, you know, well, others like stuff. Like I don't know. I've always been the person I can read a book or watch a video or something, and I just teach myself. So this is how I learned Spanish, and I'm glad I did because now I'm, you know, literally fluent in 3 languages. So I'm trilingual, and this is really nice. And I'm sure anybody of you that is also bilingual or trilingual totally appreciates that. You know, every time you travel, or even here in the US, since I moved to Texas or when I visited Arizona, there's so many people that speak Spanish as a first language. And they're always surprised to see, you know, La Machita, the blonde girl, that actually speaks Spanish and speaks Spanish fluently. So it's kind of the surprise moment.
My gosh, well, that's super awesome. That's impressive to me that you were able to teach yourself that language little by little. Um, let's move on to okay, so we have a small technical difficulty. I just switched from my phone to my laptop, and in that transition, it deleted the questions that people had submitted. So I am unable to see the chats that were previously sent. Kelly, are you still able to see them?
Yes.
Okay,
Okay.
I'm so sorry. I did the transition. I didn't know it would delete the chats.
It's okay. I can share them back to you in just a second too. So thank you, Chris. So our next question will come from CSO Chalet. Had you ever encountered a sea turtle before you embarked on that research project, which you sort of answered? And then what was your first actual experience besides walking on the beach?
Okay, yeah. So I had seen sea turtles in the water. So I was for 4 months in Egypt with my university where I did my bachelor's, and we did projects in water. So I mean, I didn't work on sea turtles. I actually did something on cleaner wrasses. But I was spending a lot of time in the water. So I always went in the morning right after sunrise and right before sunset to do my data collection. And during that time in 4 months, I got to see so many cool creatures. I had dolphins playing next to me. I saw eagle rays swimming next to me. And I also saw sea turtles swimming. So that was actually the first time I saw a sea turtle, but I had never ever seen one nesting. So that was really the first time in Costa Rica that I saw sea turtles nesting. And it was really funny because I remember when I was trained to be a research assistant, my local assistant, on day 2, I had like walked the beach twice, I think. And it was kind of around new moon. It had been raining. It was super dark the first time we were on the beach, and kind of, you could wave your hand in front of your face and you didn't see it because we don't use light on the beach. Only in the moment when you have a turtle, you turn on red light and not even white light. So I was just like, heck, how am I supposed to be finding a turtle here by myself? And I was, it was the second night, and my local sister was like, okay, you're leading now. And I'm like, what? Like, I know, like, I can't do that. And he was like, you're going to be fine. So I was just like stumbling in front of the group, and every tree trunk that I saw, like, I was, oh God, is that a turtle? And I just heard him like laughing in the background. It's like, no, it's not a turtle. Just keep on going. Just keep on going. You're not going to miss them, because you have no idea of how big they really are when, up until the moment when you see them and you're like, yeah, I would have never missed that ever. Like, even if I wouldn't have seen the tracks, like walking over them, you can feel them because they're so huge. It's like a one-wheel tractor that is like running up on the beach.
You shared that, it reminded me of when Kelly pushes us into situations that we're kind of unsure at, but awesome things happen, right? So that just made me think of that. What is the most inspiring thing you've seen as a marine biologist?
The most what?
Inspiring thing you've seen in your career?
Yeah, I think I have come to realize, especially ever at least half time back to the US, that I have lived in a huge bubble over the past years. So I was super lucky that I have been consistently surrounded by people that are very much like-minded to me and what I believe in. So I get a lot of volunteers from all over the world. Like, we have sometimes 500 to 800 volunteers per season. They come literally from everywhere. Like, we had people from Mongolia, we get people from Australia, from Europe, North America, you name it, we probably had a volunteer from there. But these people all come to help me, right? They want to be part of sea turtle conservation, ocean conservation. They want to make a difference. And even though, of course, we are confronted with poaching and a lot of, things that happen, like with the local communities, poverty and things that result from that, it's not necessarily evil people. Like, I can always see the reasons why they usually do certain things. But then moving back to the US, it was really tough for me to see so much apathy towards our natural environment. So that was actually something that I find super inspiring about my work, is that I was so lucky to always kind of feed off of other people's energies that were very similar to mine. Because here in the US, I feel sometimes I feel very isolated. I feel like I'm the only one that is doing something, even though I know it's not true. But since I don't have these people around me every day anymore, it's sometimes really, really difficult to not feel a little bit lost sometimes in the whole fight, if that makes sense.
That does, thank you. Nicholas says, I donated money to Rainforest Trust and was wondering if you were involved in the project to create an Ivory Coast first protected area. I was wondering because if it's in Costa Rica and if it protects sea turtles and other marine life.
I am not working with the Rainforest Trust. We do have some projects where we do reforestation of mangroves, because mangrove habitat is kind of I don't know, do you all know what mangroves are? Mangroves are kind of trees that grow in the water, usually in salt or brackish water, in estuaries, or right in the coast. And they're super important for a lot of different species, because there are nurseries for fish. Our manatee populations, for example, live in the mangroves. They also prevent actually flooding. So a lot of the countries that have gotten rid of the mangroves, for example, in the Sundarbans in Asia and other areas, they have massive problems with flooding because the mangroves were actually preventing the sea levels or like, big floods from entering in the land masses and where people live. So we're trying to reestablish mangroves that have been, yeah, kind of depleted in the past years because some of our sea turtle species, especially the smaller stages before they become adults, love to use the mangroves and forage, like feed in the mangroves. So it's not really like a tropical rainforest project as probably the Rainforest Trust is supporting, but this is some stuff that I've been involved in. But just as a general thing, I mean, I don't want to poo-poo the Rainforest Trust anything. They do great work, but every time you have the chance to support projects that are grassroots, that are like literally working right on the bottom, this is like where your money should be going, because you have to kind of think about the Rainforest Trust is not usually the ones that are doing the projects. They also have other organizations that work on the ground. So, but of course they need to pay their people, the administrative stuff and other people. And of course the project needs to pay stuff. So your money that you've sent, is kind of staying to a big part actually in those organizations. And then a little part goes to the project on the ground, if that makes sense. So for us, a lot of the money that you're donating can go a long way, just because salaries and food and equipment is just not as expensive in Costa Rica. So even small donations can go a really, really, really long way. So every time you have the chance to support grassroots directly, then please do it. Just kind of a general thing. But I love that you're supporting conservation. That is absolutely incredible.
I just wanted to let you know that he's super excited to be on the call and meet you because he wants to be a marine biologist.
Oh, there we go. Well, if you're 18, you can come down and help me with my turtles.
No, I think CSO Kirsten, what is he, maybe 9?
He's 10.
Oh, he's 10, okay.
He's 10, okay. Well, let's give it a few more years and then he can come down.
So Eli would like to ask, what will you do if a turtle lost 2 flippers? So I think he means like, how do you work with turtles that maybe do have health, injuries or anything like that? How do you work with those turtles?
Yeah, you know what? Interesting, sea turtles are super resilient. So you wouldn't imagine what kind of injuries I've seen in sea turtles, and they have been actually fine with it. So I have this gorgeous female that has been nesting for ever since I started my work, and she comes, so they usually come only every 2 or 3 years to nest. And she's gorgeous. I mean, she's super muscular, well-fed, but she's missing both of her hind flippers, which doesn't matter a lot while she's in the water, right? Because the front flippers are the ones that are actually doing most of the work. And the hind flippers are the one that help with steering. But when she comes to lay her eggs, she literally has nothing to dig her egg chamber with. So when we see her, we need to dig the hole for her so she can drop her eggs and the eggs are actually able to survive. Sea turtles can also do okay with like one front flipper that is missing, but if both front flippers are missing, that actually is pretty much a sign that they will not make it in the big open ocean. So that will be the moment where you either have to euthanize a turtle or you have to find an aquarium that is able to keep them. But like in Costa Rica, for example, we don't really have like big aquaria with big pools. So that would mean usually we have to euthanize them.
So Avian from Michigan asks, what's your favorite part of your job?
Oh, my favorite part of my job. I love field work. I know some of my professors always told me, but you also have to do the science and you have to sit down and write the research articles. I do that too, but it's not like I particularly enjoy all of that. I mean, analyses and stuff can be fun, but what I like about my work is that, to like maybe to other people that are just either field biologists or lab people, like I've done a lot of different stuff. So I've done genetics and I've done the actual lab work myself. I've done the stable isotope analyses and have done the lab work as well. And I don't mind it as much if I have the balance of being in the field. And plus, when I start analyzing, I actually have the story of the sample that was collected, right? So it's very different from when I would just pass on kind of a bunch of tissues to somebody in the lab. They don't know who turtle X Y on that and that day was. So for me, it's actually a moment of going down memory lane and thinking, oh, that was the feisty one that we had in the boat, and I don't know, she did this and this that was funny, or she had this kind of weird looking, I don't know what. So it's something that keeps actually reminding me of my field days while I'm in the lab, and then when I go on and like do the analyses, it's kind of fun as well. But yeah, I definitely, absolutely, my favorite part is being on the beach and in the water working with turtles.
To build onto that question, so you say how you recognize turtles' behaviors when you work with them. CSO Austin was wondering, do you ever rename the turtles that are local to you or you or work with several times, and maybe what's like a couple fun names that you guys choose?
Yeah, actually we do. I mean, it depends a little bit on the project. So for example, in the Caribbean, we have about, I would say like between 150 and 200 different females that are coming. And it's a lot. And so sometimes it's just really, turtles that kind of stick out because they have like, a hunch, or they're missing the two rear flippers or something like that that makes them special. But we're not naming them actually as often in the Caribbean as we do in the Pacific. So the Pacific is the population of Eastern Pacific leatherbacks. It's actually a really sad story because in the entire Eastern Pacific, Mexico down to Ecuador, we have about maybe 200 to 300 nesting females left. That's not a lot. In the, yeah, the prognosis is actually that we probably won't have leatherbacks in the Eastern Pacific by like 2025, if not something radically is going to change. And so when I started working in Austria, that's the beach I worked on in the Pacific, we had about, I would say, 9 nesting females per season. That's like a huge difference compared to the Caribbean. And so we named every single one of them. So I remember we had one that was called Eileen because the Irish RA that I had at that point, she always had to think of the of the song, "Hey, come on, Eileen," when she was like walking up on the beach. Yeah, Kelly knows the song. Um, yeah, so we had different names. We named one Princesa, Princess, because she was just like so pretty and had nothing, like no scars or anything on it. So yeah, we definitely named those. And when I was doing the satellite tracking, just because, it was also not that many, and we were actually following each turtle for several months, and we had people that were following online over search those turtles. We named those turtles as well. So actually, I didn't even name them. There were different school classes that adopted them, and they got to name the turtle.
That's so funny. Come On Eileen is such an iconic song. If you guys haven't heard it, you definitely should. Let's see. The next question comes from CSO Lauren, and she would like to know, what role should public policy play in wildlife conservation?
Well, so the problem with public policy is, it's a good question, but it's definitely a complex one. So the problem with public policy is that you always assume that whatever is written down is also executed, right? So let's say you have the Endangered Species Act, and or you have, even in Costa Rica, you can get up to 3 years of prison for taking sea turtle eggs or even a whole female. That's written by law. Ask me how many people have gone to prison for having stolen sea turtle eggs or killed a sea turtle. You can give me a number. Show me your fingers.
100? Oh my gosh, that's such an over.
And it's not a law that has been, written down since yesterday. It has been probably over a decade. I have myself, this is very gruesome, but literally we've been called in by the, the Ministry of the Environment to, for example, identify eggs, to know what species they're from, or identify the, turtle parts that were found. So we're going into those, houses of people that obviously have done the act. And we're walking, into the garage. There's blood everywhere. There's turtle parts everywhere. And yeah, they are being let out in handcuffs. And they're laughing in my face, and they're saying, tomorrow out again because Judge so and so is just giving me like a $300 fine, and tomorrow I'm back and I will kill more turtles. You know, so that's the problem with public policy. It's great to have them if you are able to enforce them, but the reality is, outside of the US especially, unfortunately, a written piece of law doesn't mean much.
Thank you.
This is really depressing, man. You guys need to ask better questions.
Let's see. Oh, a happier one. CSO Ben was asking, what opportunities have you gone since the sea turtle video? And I'm gonna combine that with my own question. So I personally saw your video as well that went viral. Were you expecting that to go viral? And what was your response when you saw it starting to really get attention?
Yeah, we had no idea that it would go viral. I mean, I wasn't even big on social media just because living in Costa Rica, I didn't really have internet. So a lot of the beaches that I work on have no cell phone reception, no internet. And every 2 weeks, I would leave the project on my day off, take a bus for 3 hours, use the internet for one, so I could take the bus back because there was only one. And that meant like my time was, all about reading the new emails that had come in and send off. So I had kind of pre-written emails from the last time I had gone, like sending those off, and trying to download or like load Facebook or something like that was totally beyond the scale of what I was able to do. So only when I moved to the US and I had, good internet available all the time. And I did actually a GoFundMe campaign to be able to go to a conference like right before I went to the US, I think. That was when I got my Facebook account. And I had a YouTube channel like around the same time. I don't even remember why I opened it. Nobody had subscribed to it. So that was the two channels I had when this video kind of happened. And yeah, I posted it on Facebook. Hey guys, this is the reason why I'm always ranting about single-use plastics. Please don't do it. And then overnight, it was literally within 24 hours, the whole thing totally blew out of proportion. And it was so funny because I had to leech onto the Wi-Fi of the Italian restaurant that was right next to us. So we had to go and eat a really expensive meal a few days before that to get the Wi-Fi password for the next like 3 months that we'd have been using. And it was still super slow, and it took the entire night to upload. So I kind of just, pressed upload and I went to bed because I had been on the boat the entire day. I was super tired. And then the next morning at 5 when we got up, we were getting up to go back on the boat, I just checked. I was like, oh yeah, great, it's uploaded. Okay, click Facebook, click, and I was gone. I was gone, out of cell phone reception, no internet for the next like 8 hours. And then when I came back and it was just like a few thousand hits already, I actually wrote a message to my professor and was like, hey, I said, my video is going all viral, and put it even in like quotation marks, like haha. Yeah, little did I know that within the next 24 hours, my email literally blew up. Different media outlets from all over the world were asking for interviews, and I couldn't even respond to all of them because I had to kind of do my work as well. I mean, I was there doing my research, and that had priority over everything else. And in the situation itself, I have to say, like I said, plastic has been the sad byline. So I have pulled out plastic bags out of the cloaca. So the cloaca is where, turtles urinate, defecate, and drop their eggs from. So it's like kind of on the base of their tail. And I had a turtle, for example, that couldn't lay her eggs. And when I checked, she had a whole plastic bag in it. I mean, I only saw a little bit and I started pulling on it and I got it out. But it was just like this moment where it was like a plastic straw, and it was so vividly showing of how such a useless object, especially, I mean, we all can drink without plastic straws, caused so much suffering. And I couldn't even believe it. I mean, I had seen so many crazy things. I had literally seen a turtle that was stuck in a car tire and perished there. I had seen baby turtles that were like stuck in big gallons and couldn't get out. So, but that was literally the last straw. I mean, I don't know. It was just so surreal to find a plastic straw in her nose. But interestingly is that I think also we've never checked noses before. And now everybody, of course, checks the nose of turtles. And since then we have found a plastic fork. Another research group also found a spoon, and I don't even know how they found it because they actually so you have to envision that similar to what we have, there is a connection between your nasal cavity and your buccal, your mouth. Um, when you laugh and you kind of drink something and comes out of your nose, that's exactly the connection that exists right there. And so it is when turtles eat underwater, they usually also, of course, swallow seawater, and they're trying to only hold on to the prey and not the seawater. So they usually expel the seawater through the nose, to not having to open up their mouth again. And I'm like, our theory at least is that, plastics are so light that they probably kind of swim or float out with the water and then get stuck in that connection. And that particular spoon, though, because this piece of the spoon, I don't even know what you call it, that you put into your mouth, hadn't passed through that connection. It was too big, so it was only the handle that had passed, and the other part was kind of blocking it from the inside. They had to pull it out from the mouth to even get it out. But yeah, plastic is everywhere, and it can end up in the funniest ways, or not funny, but weird ways in turtles and probably other animals as well.
That's crazy. I know as CSOs we're talking about how we can limit our use of plastic, because I can't even imagine visualizing that. So Ben was asking, what opportunities have you had since the video went viral, like being recognized by Time Magazine? What was that opportunity like?
Well, that was a huge honor. I mean, in the beginning of the whole journey, I kind of didn't really put myself into the spotlight. It was about my turtle, it was about the message. So a lot of times when I was asked for photos, I even gave photos where you could only see me with like my diving goggles. And for some reason, Time needed to dig deeper. And in 2018, they did like a big, or they asked me for an interview for the Plastic-Free July. And so I talked to one of the journalists, and they actually asked me for a photo, and I gave them again the diving goggles. They're like, can we actually get a photo where we can see your face? And I was like, sure. So I gave them that, and then it was really interesting. Like, I think about a month or 2 months later after that article, I got a phone call, and the same journalist was like, hey, I have absolutely incredible news. Like, you have been chosen to be one of the next generation leaders. And I was just like, are you really, like, are you sure you're having the right number? Like, I mean, are you really meaning to call me right now? Or maybe you're thinking of somebody else. She's like, no, it's going to be you. So it was incredible. I couldn't believe it, because there were really big names that have been chosen in the past. Trevor Noah, for example, I mean, I'm a big fan. I don't know if you guys watch him, but he was, I think, the year before. Greta Thunberg was this year, or like actually last year, 2019. So yeah, it was a huge honor, huge shoes to fill as well, because I feel people expect a lot. So I'm thinking at least a lot about what people might think and how much of an enigma I'm becoming. And I don't want to be that, I want to be somebody that's totally approachable, and I'm a real person, because I don't think it's easy to follow in the footsteps of an enigma. So I'm trying to keep it as real as possible.
Well, we'd like to thank you so much for being on our call today and your contribution. Before we close this call, one last question. What advice would you give to us as leaders of as future leaders of what advice would you give with us?
Yeah, I think you all have the chance, and it doesn't matter what kind of profession you are choosing. You can be engineers, you can be teachers, you can be biologists, you can be nurses. But I think this underlying topic of sustainability, of making choices that are actually for the greater good of the planet, that will guarantee a future for you, for your children, for your grandchildren, I think that is in the hands of all of us, right? So it's not just me that is fighting that fight. You all have the power of making those changes, of making those decisions, because one day you're going to be doctors, you're going to be CEOs of big companies. And you always have the choice of just making money, or making money and also at the same time doing the right thing. That's kind of what I think as future leaders you should always keep in mind.
We want to give a huge shout out. Thank you to CSO Marissa, even with your technical difficulties. It was incredible to have you on, Dr. Figgener. It's so important for the students to realize that you are doing great things, but you are relatable. And, you know, your sharing of the video and the sharing of your pictures was so incredible for us to have this private VIP time with you. So, all right, so CSOs, you're going to unmute, and we're going to go ahead and say our slogan all together. If you want your video on, you can. But as the CSO International Director of Student Success, CSOs, don't just hope it happens.
Make it happen.
Awesome. So thank you again for participating. We hope to see you on another call and help us continue with our Zoom in on science. Like the motto says, like you just echoed, CSOs don't just hope it happens, we make it happen. So thank you so much for being here, and we will see you guys soon. Bye.
Thank you again so much, Marissa. Great job. Thank you, Dr. Figgener. We'll see you again. More to come tomorrow. We watched that movie, The Story of Plastic, and we get to meet Charlie and Dea. So lots more for this week. Thank you all for tuning in to Zoom In on Science, and we'll see you soon.
Bye. Thank you, everyone.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And if
So Chris, just to make dreams come true, that's what I'm all about. CSO Kirsten has her little brother on the line, and I think he is just so excited to meet you. I wanted you to go ahead, Nicholas, go ahead and unmute.
Hey,
And
Nicholas, nice meeting you.
Hi, thank you.
You're very welcome. Did you enjoy the session?
Yeah.
Awesome.
You
you
want
have
to
any
work with sea
questions?
turtles, or do you want to work with whales, or what do you want to work with in marine biology? Any specific animal?
I don't know.
That's okay. You don't have to know just yet. But be careful. If you ever like see a turtle, you might get hooked. You might get the virus, you know, the turtle virus, and then you want to only work with turtles. If you guys have any questions, Kelly also has my email. So if you have any questions pertaining to anything related to I'm always happy to answer.
I definitely want more sea turtle pictures.